Hello, my name is Brian Grant and you are watching another PSU Intermediate Excel video. In this video we're going to be creating named ranges, and I think you're really going to like these. These are going to make your formulas much more stable, they're going to make them easier to read, and they're also going to make them even easier to write. So let's get started. Let's say for example we've got these different sales right here, right? And we need to calculate the tax for these sales. So we've got our tax rate up here, it's 8%. Well, the way you would normally do this is you would go equals, left arrow just like that, you multiply it times the tax rate. You're going to hit F4 to lock it, Control Enter, Control C, and Control V. Okay, that works, no big deal. But if you look at the formula, it's, here on the sheet it's okay because we could see these boxes that sort of point to what the numbers are, and we say, oh, that $100, oh, that's a sale, I get it. Oh, that 8%, that's a tax rate, I get it. But you can imagine if this was on some other worksheet, that would be kind of cryptic. You would have to go to the worksheets where these ranges are to figure out what it is they're actually referring to. So let's try something a little different. We're going to go up here to this tax rate, and I'm going to go up here, and this thing that says D4, which looks like it just tells you what cell you're on, and it does tell you that. Notice I've got the little the I-shaped bar, the I bar there. I'm going to left click, and I'm going to type in tax rate with no space, and hit enter. Okay, now notice I'm going to arrow down, arrow up. Instead of saying D4, it says tax rate. So if I go down here, I can still, what I could do is I could do equals. I'm going to select that $100 again. And instead of multiplying it times D4, I'm going to type in tax. And notice, I didn't even have to finish typing it. It already selected that for me. So I'm going to hit Tab to have it autocomplete that for me. I could have just typed it in myself, but this is the easier way to do it. And notice here where it says tax rate, it's green, and this up here is green. This here is a named range, and it is pointing to this cell, right? So now I don't have to hit F4 because tax rate's always pointing to this cell. I'm just going to hit regular old enter, click on that, Control C, Control V to paste, escape. And now, when you open the formula, you've still got this B10, which is maybe not ideal. It's pointing to the sale over here. But let's say the tax rate is off on some different page. Suddenly your formula becomes much easier to understand by somebody that isn't you. Or say you come back to this 2 weeks later and you're wondering what B10 and C4 are. Well, in this formula, you know that if you know that B10 is sales, well then you know that this is tax rate because it just says tax rate right in the formula. So this does like 3 big things for you. First off, it's more stable because this tax rate is sort of an absolute reference. You can imagine that there's sort of automatically dollar signs attached to it. I don't have to remember to hit F4 when I type it in. It's always going to be pointing to this tax rate thing. So in that sense, it's more stable. It's much easier to read by somebody else that's looking at your workbook, and by you 2 weeks from now when you're coming back to figure out what it is that you did. The other thing is it also makes it much easier to write formulas because you can, instead of having to sort of arrow over to places, you can let's arrow over here, and now I can just type in what I want, tab, and enter. It's a little bit easier. Now I'm going to make it even easier than that by doing something else. Up here, I'm going to also create a named range. I'm going to do it the same way for now. So this is the way you're probably going to do it for a little while, and that's okay. This is a very easy way to do it. It's very efficient. You just use the mouse. You go up here, you click, and I'm going to call this tax rate also, but I'm going to put before tax rate, I'm going to put VAL and then TAXRATE. Notice that everywhere there's a new word, instead of a space between them, I just use a capital letter. This is called camel case. This is going to make these things a lot easier to read and understand in your formulas. Okay, so I've done that. I'm going to hit enter. And now if I come down here, I type in val tax rate, I've got it, and I can do that. I can multiply it by this guy over here, Control Enter, Control C, Control V, and I got the same thing I had before. Now you might be asking yourself, Brian, this tax rate, that's easy to understand. Why would I come over here and Why would I type in val tax rate? That makes it more complicated. Doesn't that make it more complicated? Well, it does at first, but let me, I'm going to go over here, and I've got these other things, discount rate, sales target. I'm not really going to use these in this calculation, but let's imagine I've got a bigger, more sophisticated workbook, and I'm going to need these somewhere else. I'm going to go ahead and name these guys as well. So I'm going to go up here and click, type in val discount rate, enter. Okay, that works. That's, yep, val discount rate, got it. And I'm going to up here, left click, and now this is val sales target. I hit enter. Okay. Now, I'm going to come down here, I'm going to delete this stuff and sort of start over. Now, when I'm going to left click over here to get this guy, multiply. Say I can't remember what I called this thing. I know that I had something that referred to the tax rate, and maybe, I don't know, tax rate's pretty obvious, but let me just show you what I mean. If I type in val, suddenly, right in front of me, I have all of my different named ranges just listed out in front of me. So it's very easy, if I've got things that are sort of, maybe it's hard to remember what the name is, to just sort of get a big list that I can just see and very quickly go down and say, do I want the discount rate? No. Do I want the sales target? No. Oh, I want the tax rate. Tab. And Control Enter. Control C. Whoops. That's not what I wanted to do. Control V. Escape. So you don't have to do this. You don't have to use this. You don't have to use this naming convention with putting the val in front of things. But what it does is it makes it so that when you're entering formulas, it's much easier to find all of your named ranges all at once, rather than having to remember what it is you called something. Also, you are not restricted to named ranges that refer to a single cell. What I can also do here is I'm going to go over here. I'm going to select all this. I'm going to select all this, and I'm going to create a named range a different way. I'm going to go to the ribbon, formulas, define name, and define name. Okay, so here's the ribbon. It's up here. Formulas, define name, define name. New name. Okay, this is a little slower way to do it when you're using the mouse, but it gives you some more options. I'm going to do instead of val, I'm going to do COL for column, and I'm going to call this total sales. And notice I could put some comments in there if I want to, type I shouldn't capitalize that, description, period. And I can also change where it points to, but I like that. That's exactly what I want it to point to. It's pointing to right there. Okay, I'm going to hit OK. And now, I want to go over here to this cell right here, and I want to calculate total sales. I'm going to do sum, open parentheses, COL, and right now I've only got one named range that's a column. But if I had a whole bunch, they'd be listed right here. And I'm gonna. Do I want these functions? No. I want this named range of the column of total sales. Hit Tab, close parentheses, and enter. So that really sort of simplifies things, and it's a nice way to make your formulas really readable, both to you later on when you're trying to figure out what you did, and to other people that have to look at your model. Now. That naming convention that I showed you a second ago, where you type in val for a single value and call for a sort of a column of values. Again, those are optional. There's nothing about Excel that says you have to do those. You can forego them entirely. But if you want to do it the way, this is generally how I do it. You can put COL for a column, ROW, which is ROW might be something like, it doesn't really make sense here, but that I might type ROW tax rates or something. Mat, that is, you can also call it box. I call it mat. You can think of it as a mat, like a placemat, I guess, or a matrix. And that's a two-dimensional collection of cells. So I could, this doesn't really make all that much sense, but I could do that. Go up here again to formulas, define name. I'm going to call this mat. All taxes. Kind of a meaningless calculation from a business point of view, but it'll show you what I mean. And now I can go over here and I can do equals sum, open parentheses, MAT. Now I've got a list of all my matrices or mats or boxes, whatever you want to call them. I hit tab because that's the one that I want. Close parentheses and enter. Also, if you don't like, maybe you don't like column and row because, like, you know, maybe this is a column, or that's I'm sorry, this is a row, and you think of this is a column, and that's just confusing. You can also type in VEC for vector, which is sort of either a column or a row. It's a one-dimensional collection, either horizontal or vertical. Okay, so I've already you can use this if you want to, or you can build your own, or you can use none at all. At some point, we're going to get into tables, and tables are also things that you can get to by typing like equals val. And so if you name your named ranges with the naming convention, it's going to make everything just run a little bit smoother. So I recommend it, but it's entirely optional. So I'm going to equals, get out of there. So the different ways to name a range. Well, I've already shown you 2 of them. You can click on the name box, which is that guy up there. That's the easiest to remember, and if that works for you, go for it. It's great. You can also go to ribbon, formulas, define name, which is a perfectly fine way to do it. The nice thing about the ribbon in Excel is that any button on the ribbon also has a series of shortcut keys associated with it. So if I do, let's say I'm going to go up here. I'm just going to type in 13, Control Enter. I'm going to do this guy. I'm going to do hit the Alt key, which is going to open up my ribbon shortcut. I'm going to hit the M key to go to formulas. Then I'm going to hit the M key for define name, M, and the D key for define name. And then I type in val and some clever name. Okay, enter. Now that seemed really slow when I did it, but I don't know, 15, enter. If you practice, it's actually pretty quick. MMD. Alt MMD. So you know, use the mouse if you want to. That's plenty fast. But this shortcut key, once you learn it and memorize it, if you do a bunch of these, it's going to make you work a whole lot faster. The other way that you could do it is, I don't know, what are we going to do? 24 there. Control Enter. You can also hit Control F3, which is going to go to your name manager, which has all the different named ranges you have in your workbook. And you can click on Edit and edit them. You can type in descriptions if you want to. You can change where they point to if you want to. If you're not happy with where they're pointing, you can move them. You can delete them if they're bothering you, if you don't want them anymore. Or you can define new ones here and hit New. And this you've already seen before. Also, I will mention very briefly, if you are typing in a formula, let's say equals sum, open parentheses, if you hit the F3 button while in edit mode, F3, it's going to open up this paste name dialog box, and it's just going to give you a list of all your different named ranges. I tend to find that typing in VAL and then finding the one I want and hitting tab is faster, but this is another option that might work for you. So I'm going to do some clever name, close parentheses, Control Enter. Okay, so if you're building a small model or maybe a medium-sized model that's only used by you, using named ranges honestly may not be worth the trouble. They're very cool, but after you do them for a while, if it's just a single page, you're like, yeah, I don't really need to do that. I know where everything is. I know how all these different cells interact with each other. But if you are building something medium-sized, or especially if you're building something huge, or especially if you've got other people that are going to need to look at your model and sort of look through all the formulas and try and figure out how everything works, these named ranges, these are an excellent way to make your models much easier to work with, much easier to troubleshoot, and generally much easier to understand. Okay, well, that is it for named ranges. Thank you for watching, stay tuned, and I will see you next video.